So let's start with JD Vance. First of all, play a little bit of sound from some of the things JD Vance has said in past interviews criticizing Donald Trump.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm going to vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
I'd pick him.
Yeah, he's compared him to Hitler, said people voted for him for idiots and stuff, but that was then, this is now. We talked before we went on the air about the impact you think J.D. Vance might have on the ticket.
Yeah, so yesterday my reaction was that J.D. Vance doesn't advance into the general election for Donald Trump, in that he is a smaller, newer, younger clone version of Donald Trump. So he's not going to attract any new voters, I think, in one way. But what he does signal is that this is the future of the MAGA party. It's no longer the Republican Party. And he is everything that Donald Trump believes in and more, and he is the future. He is probably the most conservative and will take us back the furthest if he ever becomes president. And when we are voting for people who are the age that Trump and Biden are, that is definitely something that we could think of. And you're voting for the future of the party. And when you look at who the opportunity that Donald Trump had to pick as a vice president, certainly he wasn't going to pick Nikki Haley, but we'll put Nikki Haley out there anyway. Marco Rubio, Don Burgum, a whole bunch of people who represent a more moderate within the Republican Party version of politics. And instead he went with J.D. Vance. And so what this may do for the Democrats is point out that a vote for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance is a vote to bring us back further into the world where it's impossible to get an abortion to save your life, or if you're having a miscarriage, to get the medical treatment that you want. If your children are LGBT or Q, it's going to be a terrible world for them, because this will be the solidified party for the Republican Party. And I think that's what J.D. Vance brings to the ticket.
That argument has worked really well against Donald Trump, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean,
he's more extreme, though, than Trump on abortion and gay. He's against gay marriage, no exceptions for rape or incest. Trump is smart enough politically to know that abortion is not a winning issue, but yet he's brought this guy in.
Well, Trump's at the top of the ticket,
right,
though.
But you think about how they tried to really tamper down the abortion issue in the Republican National Convention platform, yet he picks a vice president who clearly is saying...
You don't think he's going to change his position by Wednesday night on this?
I don't think it's going to matter.
I've spoken to President Trump, whose wisdom I value so much.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
Because it is who he is. I mean, it's sort of like the Mitt Romney conversation. They're all going to flip-flop a little bit, especially when they get to the general election. But when you look at the history of his short history as a lawmaker, what J.D. Vance has said and done, he is definitely makes the Trump ticket the most conservative ticket we've had in a long time.
You know, one of the things, after questioning your wisdom here, I'm going to advance my own, which is probably ridiculous, and advance. I don't really see, when the Hitler comment was made to someone else, I don't think it's on tape. When the Democrats fund ads with the vice presidential nominee of Donald Trump looking at the camera and savaging Donald Trump as the worst thing that ever happened in the Republican Party, I'm a demagogue, I'm a never Trumper, he's a terrible candidate, you got to be an idiot to vote for him, he's a moral disaster, he's reprehensible, he's a cynical a-hole, this is all what... How does that not damage, if it's played incessantly, Donald Trump?
So the Republicans, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, are not going to win this election. The Democrats are going to lose this election. If Donald Trump ends up in the White House again, it's not because people decided to vote for Vance and Trump. It's because people decided not to vote for Biden. So they can play that all they want. I still don't think that Donald Trump has, other than incrementally grown his base when it comes to some black men, some Latino men, some people who are upset about one thing or another that goes into this potpourri. The people who don't vote for Joe Biden, who would have voted for a Democrat, are the ones who will put Trump in the White House.
You don't think the assassination attempt expands his base, just a smidgen?
Maybe it's, but this is the incremental increases that Trump will get. I mean, I honestly thought last night when I watched Trump, how for the first time in the many years I've been watching him on television, he actually looked like a human being to me. He actually looked up. I felt empathy for him. I felt how hard it must have been for him to go into that room after going through that traumatic event. So yeah, definitely there's going to be some empathy for him, but we're still 112 days away from the general election. And now that we're going to have the ticket set, it's going to be a different conversation.
Okay, so you say Biden, he wouldn't win it, Biden would lose it. Here, I assume you saw the Lester Holt interview last night? Yes?
Yes,
on NBC?
I did.
Your station.
I'm winking at Peter. I'm
Here's
sorry.
what, how is that going?
It's going good. We're having a good relationship.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Here's what Biden said when he was asked by Lester Holt last night on NBC, who he turned to for advice about whether to stay in the race.
Who do you listen to on deeply personal issues like the decisions whether to stay in the race or not?
Me. Look, I've been doing this a long time. The idea that I'm the old guy, I am. I'm old. But I'm only 3 years older than Trump, number one. And number two, my mental acuity's been pretty damn good.
What did you think of Joe Biden last night with Lester Holt?
Oh boy. So I would say when I turn on the television or watch it on the computer, I realize I have this bias that I'm kind of hopeful that it's going to be better than it is, and then you get 20 seconds in and you're like, oh no, it's not any better than I think it is. Biden, I think, is a competent president right now, and he may be a competent president for a couple of years if he gets reelected. The question is he a competent candidate? And that is the problem. I don't think that he demonstrated last night anything except that he can share ideas without a teleprompter. He can't complete sentences without a teleprompter. I was happy to see him push back on Lester Holt around some issues. I mean, we get caught up in this. As he said, why aren't you covering the guy lied X amount of times, Trump lied X amount of times? But it also misses the point. I keep pointing out, we've all got siblings or friends we went to school with who you get an A on your paper and they get D's and they get it up to a C and suddenly they're a hero and you get a B and you get punished. And that's where Biden is in this conversation. I don't think last night's interview did anything to make people who are calling for Biden to step down on the Democratic side feel any more confidence in him.
Yeah, wouldn't you like to have a few more Democrats with the courage of their convictions and say this publicly?
Well, I think right now, I think they have been saying it publicly up until Friday.
A few of them.
I talked to a number of people yesterday. There is a moment of acknowledging the trauma that happened and the attack that happened on Saturday and how it's probably not the best time right now for the Democrats to be fighting in public. It doesn't show respect to the events of Saturday. And the Republican National Convention is off and running at the moment, so it might not get the attention that they need. But they are still very much, I'm talking to people who are very much still talking about what to do about Joe Biden at the top.
But there is a date, an expiration date. I don't know what it is,
I
but
don't
the
either, yep.
Democratic Convention, I don't know, the 19th, the 16th or something in August. There's a date, unless he resigns so that Kamala Harris becomes president, so she runs as an incumbent, which I don't think is going to happen. There is a point after which there's no time to have any kind of even mini primary, as Jim Clyburn or James Carville suggested, right? So, I mean, the reality is maybe a week after the Republican convention, either he decides this is not right for me to do and he steps aside, or he's the nominee.
Yep, and I would say to Democrats, if the Republicans can line up behind Donald Trump after the events of January 6th, if Joe Biden doesn't step down and you can't line up behind Joe Biden, then you get the president you deserve.
We had a caller the other day who said, I'd vote for Joe Biden on a ventilator before I vote for Donald
By
Trump.
the way, JD Vance said that he would have not certified the election were he the vice
That's a
president.
very important point.
Yeah, that he was okay with basically overturning the will of the people in that election.
You know, so you're voting for administrations on every single ballot. And so you're just going to have to hold your nose and stop complaining and get in line, or you get what you get and you don't get upset, as they used to tell me.
We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
So conspiracy theories, a lot of them from the left over the attempted assassination.
Whatever are you talking about? I hadn't spent 4 hours looking at certain rabbit holes.
You know, we used to hear, when I used to hear the word false flag, I associate that with Alex Jones, the guy who said that, you know, that Sandy Hook was made up. And now we have people on the left saying that this was a false flag operation on Saturday. I mean, come on.
No, I mean, listen, there are any number of ways that people react to trauma when it happens. Just because a whole bunch of things happened, a coincidence of things happened at the same time, that make it seem like it's a conspiracy. I think we've learned over the years that conspiracies are very hard to pull off, and
Yeah.
humans are not really good at doing it. But look, there's a lot of suspicious stuff that if you look at, the guy that everyone, the QAnon people think is John F. Kennedy Jr., he was in the crowd right behind Trump. And when the shooting happened, he didn't move at all. He just kept looking, you know. So I can understand, since I spent 4 hours looking at it, how that would be intriguing. But at the same time, we can't take our eyes off the fact that the reason the assassination attempt happened is because a young man had access to a weapon of war. And as we're probably going to learn, there's not going to be any great conspiracy as to why this young man did it. He obviously, I think it's safe to say, had mental health issues, because if you do that, you have a mental health issue.
Right.
And he had access to a weapon of war. What the Secret Service did or didn't do also should be under tight scrutiny, but they're also woefully underfunded, the Secret Service. So if we want to protect our candidates and our elected officials, we need to both make weapons of war more difficult to get for people, and we need to fund the Secret Service.
By the way, I've read a lot about the underfunding the last couple of days to make sure that this is not BS, and you're right, it is. However, a big however, what the Secret Service did not do there and what they didn't do with that building, in my opinion, is not, inexpert opinion, is not a function of funding, it's a function of competence. I mean, it's a real scary kind of thing for both Biden and Trump
Everybody,
going out
it's
in the
scary
world.
for everybody.
Really.
And it's also an issue, I've heard a number of people say, the lessons of 9/11 we still haven't learned, and that's the lesson of communications between law enforcement agencies when there's an event that they're trying to do, or when there is a crisis. And I think
Yeah.
Same with the marathon
Yeah,
bombing, not just
absolutely.
9/11.
Yeah,
So-
when you
so-
saw the video of the guy crawling on that roof,
Yes.
it was really, and the people looking up and saying, look at this guy, look at this guy, and you realize he was acting suspiciously before that by the metal detectors, and we don't know if that
Well,
was
we had James Pindle on yesterday from the Globe, who
Right.
wrote his piece. He was there.
He was there.
He said the
half hour before.
they're trained. The Secret Service, the snipers, are trained on that rooftop. So and that's where they ended up shooting.
Right.
In any case, I assume people know that you went to every single day of the Karen Reed trial.
2 days I did not go.
So July 22nd.
22nd is the
when
new
they were-
filing. There's
okay.
a new filing that just happened, which I haven't had a chance to read those.
What exactly is happening? By the way, we still have no resolution about the 12-0
No.
for acquittal versus 10-2 for conviction.
No, and none of the
Okay.
jurors, I've made it, jurors can come to me. I'm happy to talk to you anonymously as well. We don't have any verification from outside sources or the jurors about what they voted. So the next hearing, I believe, is her defense team has put forward, they would like charges dismissed. They would like the
Second-degree
murder dismissed, and I believe the leaving
the scene, yeah.
and leaving the manslaughter to be adjudicated. And the Commonwealth has answered those motions, saying basically there's no precedence for us to drop those based on the fact that there's no verdict. There was a mistrial, there's no verdict. So I think what we'll see in this hearing is if the Commonwealth is going to continue to, she still, has been charged, to see if there's going to be another trial. And again, there's been papers filed, which I haven't looked at motions yet, and we'll see what the next steps in the trial are.
We talked to Andrew Cabral about this the other day, who before being Secretary of Public Safety and the Sheriff of Suffolk County was a prosecutor in Suffolk DA's office for years, and a pretty skillful prosecutor too. A thing I still haven't gotten an adequate explanation about is I don't understand why the judge in this case did not ask the jury if they'd reached a verdict on any of the three charges. I mean, and we don't know if the 12-0 is true, but true or not, why wouldn't that question be asked?
I have no idea. I mean, it's one of the things that has been fascinating for me is watching everyday people, especially the Karen Reed supporters and the supporters who are anti-Karen Reed or supporting the O'Keefe family, be so frustrated with the way our judicial system works and be surprised about the things that judges can and cannot do. Like, you can get as mad as you want at the judge for what she did or didn't do, but it seems that most of the things are in the realm of acceptability and legal, and are legal. So it's good for all of us to pay attention to that.
Beth Teitel has another
Yeah,
great
she's
column
a
about
great
this whole
writer.
thing about the fanatics still protesting is the headline. She talked about how these people are still protesting because they're mad at the Norfolk District Attorney Michael Morrissey, and they've got these signs out, Morrissey's got to go, justice is coming. And then she talked about how she interviewed this one guy who said it was a very busy week as a protester. He was at one protest yesterday. It was really hot there. Then he had to go to South Boston because he was protesting outside the Massachusetts State Police Barracks. This is about that guy Proctor who got up in the stand and said things about, terrible things about Karen Reed. Then he spent Tuesday meeting at the Canton Select Board. I wasn't clear where they came into things. Then he's heading to Dedham to support the blogger known as Turtle Boy in court appearances related to his coverage of the case. And I'm thinking to myself, these people are up in arms about the Karen Reed case, but we're really not up in arms. I mean, no one's taking to the streets about what's going on with our national politics or any bigger issues, or like at the State House politics.
Yeah, it's
we have
interesting.
outrages every day.
I had a woman come up to me during the trial who was a Karen Reed supporter who said to me, we have to vote Michael Morrissey out. I just found out we vote for district attorneys. And I was like going to call the ACLU and go, remember what a difference the DA makes.
Fabulous
There's a whole
campaign.
new group of people here. And then she said, and after we vote out Michael Morrissey, we're going to vote out Joe Biden. And I went, okay, I guess that's all together. But the idea that these challenges in our judicial system, the Canton Select Board is about the oversight of the Canton Police, who were the first responders there.
Okay, thank
and
you.
that one of their police officers who's related to the person who owns the home where John O'Keefe's body was found is a police officer in Canton. And Proctor testified that they had been out drinking on duty in a state trooper vehicle, and Kevin Albert had lost his badge and they couldn't find it, so he was suspended for that.
And he was worried about whether he lost his gun as
Yes,
well.
he did have his gun, though he did not lose it. So all of this is, not the conspiracy part of it. This is people understanding how our government works and doesn't work, and they're reacting to it. I would hope that it expands and say, okay, this is sort of the platform that Black Lives Matter was built on, the overreach of government, the overreach and over-prosecution of certain constituencies that don't have the money to hire a David Yannetti and an Alan Jackson. I've had defense attorneys, I'm sure you guys have heard this, say to me, if every single person who was charged with a crime was able to not plead out but actually go to court, and had the money to do it, they'd probably be found not guilty because of the mistakes that are routinely made in investigation and in their prosecution. So I'd love for this to be a wake-up call. How do we reform our police departments and our budgets? How do we reform our legal system?
We're going to, by the way, they decided they're going to reform that system as soon as they get rid of AR-15s.
Yes.
It's going to have right
Yes.
after that.
But it's the same thing with Trump. We talked about this with Nancy Gertner. If you've got millions of dollars, you can
Right.
hold up the court system forever, and you're out-lawyering the prosecution. And if you got a lot of money in probably 90% of the cases that come before the courts.
Right.
Sue O'Connell, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Sue
Good to
O'Connell.
see you.